It's the podcast that shakes and stirs up pharmacy. Welcome to PBM on the Rocks.
Yo, nutty stuff this week.
Kind of a rough day in the Minnesota legislative world, but we'll leave that for another day.
Well, I don't know. If you're going to, have a vent session about it over a drink, this is the place to do it.
It's a big drink, let me tell you.
It's a big universe. This is the Star Wars episode. Come now.
Hey.
Not bad. But yeah, Minnesota's got some stuff going on.
Yeah, we do. And we'll just leave it at stuff because there's a whole lot we could fill in that blank with.
Right? Coping mechanisms. That's why we drink.
That is so true.
Did everybody bring their Star Wars themed drink?
You'll be so proud.
Why don't we just start with Lord Dr. Jeremy? What's your Star Wars drink?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I've got I call it the Han shot first. It's very different than my other drinks. Very different. What I've got is a shot of Jameson and a singular ice cube. So because Han is stone cold. And I've doubled that up. Well, really quadrupled it up to where it's a shot per ice cube, but it's called the Han shot first. Very different than my other drinks.
I know. My gosh, it's good to see you branching out. And Han did shoot first, so I think that's appropriate. Good for you. All right. Well, Miguel, what's your Star Wars themed drink?
Okay. Well, I made something that I've never made before, and I called it a Tatooine Sunset.
Oh, I love
it. It is rum, ginger beer, lime juice, and 2 Luxardo cherries representing the 2 sons of Tatooine.
I love it. Oh, that's brilliant.
Nice.
That's so good.
Flesh and
That's so
juice.
good. All right.
I
Good.
like it.
Brandy, what's your drink?
Okay, you'll be so proud of me. I actually made a good one. So it's the BB8 Bellini. I did look up the recipe. But it's Prosecco, blood orange juice, and peach puree.
I
Look how
love
pretty
it. It's
it is.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's really
gorgeous.
good, actually.
This is perfect. Okay. All right. Well, President Deb, what's your Star Wars drink today?
My store's drink is a Qui Gon Gin Tonic.
Ooh, I love it.
Well done. Well played.
Oh, this makes me
Stuck
happy.
in got the beaker. We got the Better Than Booze. It doesn't have the alcohol in it, but it's a great mixer if you want to put alcohol in it. And we are going to enjoy.
I like it.
Tonic. This is so creative. All right, Shannon, what is your Star Wars drink?
Deb, you and I must have the great minds that think alike. So I just did a Qui Gon Gin.
Wow.
Okay.
And, but I put it in a really festive glass.
I love it.
So mine is Hendrick's Gin with Dôme de Canton ginger liqueur, lime juice, and then I topped it with ginger beer.
Yours are always so fancy.
Yeah. Jen, our special guest, what are you drinking, sir?
So my wife told me this was called a baby Yoda Margarita, and then I messed up the decoration. So that's on me, right? Like she had the limes on each side and everything else. Because it's really just about the decoration. It's a perfect Patron margarita dressed up.
It's the perfect color. It
Right.
is. Look at that.
I've got a fabulous refill.
Oh my gosh,
So-
that's great. And Jen, you just recently got married, so we're going to toast to that. All right, and I'm going to tell you guys what I have. I have what is called the spicy Mango-lorian. So it's actually, it started off, it's actually the Mango-lorian, so the Mandalorian, but I couldn't find mango rum that wasn't mango and chili. Then I was like, well, I'll roll with it. So it is mango and chili rum with, so 2 ounces of that, 1 ounce of orange juice, 1 ounce of mango nectar, and then some chili pepper flakes on top. And I did the little pepper seasoning on the side. But the thing I'm most proud of is I actually did take the time to do this. I was trying to figure out how to cut a mango piece into like the shape of a Mandalorian helmet. And I couldn't do that. So I made the mango piece the shape of the A in the logo. And then I tied together some stuff I found around my house. I got a out front and a cinnamon stick. And I'm like, well, this kind of looks like the weapons he carries. So Oh, and then club soda, that little bit of club soda gives it a kind of brings out all the spice. So spicy Mango-lorian. So I think you guys did great. I'm proud of you. May the
And look at you getting all creative with the garnish. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I'm channeling my inner Shannon. So yes.
I had wanted to do blueberry puree to turn it blue, the color of Qui Gon's lightsaber, but I ran out of time to go to the store to get blueberries. So, oops.
Oh yeah. Well,
But for anybody listening, if you want to do that, then it would be the right color too.
do you have any recommendations for what they should do if they want to turn it the color of Mace Windu's lightsaber? He's the only one that has a purple lightsaber.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a condition for him to do the role. Was he wanted a different lightsaber color than anyone else, and he got to choose it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well,
He
if
was
it
just
is
like,
going to
"Nope,
go
I get
purple,
to
I would
choose."
go with plum puree.
Or blackberries.
Or blackberry.
Yeah.
Blackberries would work as well.
Yes.
Depending upon the type of gin is which way you'd go with the fruit.
Yeah.
So in our happy hour crew today, we have two very special guests. So Jen, I wondered if you might just tell the people who are listening a little bit about yourself. We are so happy. We've been wanting to have you on for some time now, and we get to have you on the Star Wars episode, so lucky us.
It should be kind of interesting. I'd like to see where we get the puns in. So my name's Jen Laws. I am the president and CEO of Community Access National Network. We are a 27-year-old patient advocacy organization focused on issues around HIV and hepatitis C. And that might feel a little specialized, but we look at the broader landscape through this kind of like hyper-focused disability lens, but also with some of the most amazing federal programs that are out there. But when you leave it up to states to administer them, things get a little fuzzy, right?
Imagine that.
But we've got partners all up and down the chain of the kind of ecosystem around healthcare. We're primarily funded by pharmaceutical manufacturers. I like to disclose that. I spend more time telling them what to do than us trying to figure out what's going on. And that's the beautiful part of our autonomy. But certainly we've got providers who are partners. We've got pharmacies that are partners. We've got program administrators in states and regulators on the federal level that are partners. Because really, you're never going to get to solving the healthcare problems without talking from the patient perspective and experience first. So whether it's I'm having problems with my pharmacy or getting my PBM to pay for something, or my provider's not listening to me, there are different points all along that process that the patient perspective is really going to guide your answers and identify the problems where they're at.
Nice.
And I will tell the listeners, I give my full endorsement to Jen and his organization. They are awesome and they get it. Like, they understand exactly what's going on. They understand the bad actors within healthcare, and they are all about taking care of patients and taking care of pharmacies and making sure that we're all in this together. Like, they are great.
Oh, thank you. I love you too, Jeremy.
You're welcome. Just wait till I get drunk.
But you guys do good work, and it's just been such a joy knowing you this year. I wish we had met, years ago, just years ago, because we have all been working so hard, and I think we all know that we can't do it alone.
Absolutely. Like, we can talk the broader policy issues, right? But at the end of the day, when a patient has a question about what's going on with their healthcare, or they need to argue back with their insurance or anything else like that, your pharmacist is the person that you go to talk to. And we saw this from emergency situations through COVID to like, help me manage my chronic condition today, right? Or when my kid gets sick, like, who's really helping you there? It's going to be the pharmacist behind the counter that's going, hey, that's your first point of contact. So we've got to look at this as partnership.
Absolutely.
And our other special guest, Miguel, you've been on PBM on the Rocks before, and it's been entirely too long.
Well, yeah, this is the one I want to be on, though. It's the Star Wars themed episode. So I'm glad you waited till now. Thank you.
It's okay, Miguel. I know you big dogged us, but you deserve to big dog us. You do big dog things.
Tell us what you've been doing.
Well, yeah, I think we're the Rebel Alliance, right? I mean, in this,
Absolutely.
if we're going to go with a theme, we're definitely not the evil empire. And so we're a scrappy band of folks getting together to try to blow up that Death Star. So
Yeah.
I think we're doing it all the time. And sometimes it gets pretty hairy.
So true. So if any of
That's
you watched Andor, which is the series on Disney that leads up to Rogue One, it's so good, and it's very
great. The
subtle.
half I've seen, then my
It's
child was born.
It's priorities, Lord Dr.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
about 10 years from now.
But
we'll
it's about the
finish it.
coming together of the Rebel Alliance. So if you're a Star Wars dork like I am and you're watching this, you might think, oh, you're watching the story of Cassian Andor, and you are. But it's also about how these ragtag, rebel camps sort of start to come together, which I really liken to what we've been doing for the last several years. We've all been our own little rebel camps, and yeah, we're coming together. We're going to blow up the Death Star.
Do they have a drunk one that yells on social media?
Yeah,
I've not got to that part yet.
I think that's the Han Solo story one, Jeremy. I think he spends all of his time yelling on social media.
He got banned from Twitter.
Well, and for the benefit of our listeners who may not be as familiar with Star Wars, Monique and Miguel, you've been talking about blowing up the Death Star and, defeating the
Evil Empire.
Evil Empire.
Evil Empire. Thank you. See, I'm more of a Harry Potter girl. Please forgive me. But
You'll be leading the way in August when we do the
yes,
Harry
I will be
Potter
leading the
episode.
way for Harry Potter's birthday.
I'm right there with
However,
you.
for the benefit of our listeners, would you like to determine and tell them who the Evil Empire is?
Gosh, which one of them is the Death Star, guys?
I'm just going to choose CVS.
No.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably United just because they're so much bigger, but I'm
Jen's like, yes.
Jeremy for the win.
it's clearly United, but my personal hatred is more directed towards CVS because they got me banned from Twitter that one time.
That one
It's
time.
Yeah, the ban didn't take. It's fine.
Like, do you really have to choose one? Because I hate Express Scripts, so.
Well, but if you look at the size of United and all the flaws with this change nonsense happening, it's all the flaws in the design, right? It's just going to blow up, and it's not going to at this point.
You know
I
what?
cannot wait.
That's what
Yeah.
happens when it's a house of cards. It just takes a little nudge somewhere. Once you get like that first one to fall, it's all going to come. It's ridiculous. Once they really figure this stuff out, it'll come down.
They've already
One
swung
domino.
twice now, right? Like they've already swung twice
One
now.
domino.
But everybody's getting fucked over, right? And everybody's going, I don't know why. Why aren't my prescriptions getting there? Why am I seeing all these problems over and over and over again? And it'd be a fucking joke at this point, except United already writes these ridiculous PAs. Everybody's already running into these barriers. So nobody's even blinking an eye at the fact that their financial and personal information is just gone, much less to the point that it includes, like, they govern TRICARE's communications. Our military personnel's individual healthcare data is compromised. What the fuck?
Oh, it's insane. And if you really like look at it, they've got all this. They got hacked and didn't even blink an eye over any of it. They're just doing what they want, and no one's making them do anything else. Like, it's United gets to call the shots, and no one seems to give a shit.
I saw on the news, Chiron, though, that United Health chairman is expected to be called before Congress to account for what happened. So
He refused the first time.
oh, did he?
Yeah, he didn't show up.
What was he like? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now
My
counting
dear.
my money and figuring out where the breach happened with the cyber attack.
He has to go, I think it's a House hearing and a Senate hearing on the 1st.
Oh, ooh. See what he
It'd
said.
be terrible if a bunch of people showed up and protested and threw things at him. That would be awful. I don't encourage any of that.
Rotten
Don't
fruit
do
and
those
brown.
things.
Like,
I'm
like
being
rotten
told.
eggs and rotten fruit?
Do you have a gag clause
I'm being
on
told
you?
I can't call for certain things.
Well, he's just gonna
I'm being
I
say
think
told
the
everyone
truth.
should show up in like a black cat mask. Wasn't that like the Alpha V black cat
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever was that?
Guy Fawkes?
Stand there like silently with these like black cat masks on.
The whole problem with all that is they're not going to end up doing anything. He comes walking in, he goes, "These are not the droids you're looking for," and
Oh, it'll be a dog and pony show. You know how these hearings go. That lawmakers come in and they just want their sound bites and they do this or that, and it's going to be a dog and pony show. And
It'll be a
I
droid
mean,
and pony show.
a droid and pony show. I mean, nothing will really come crashing down until it's fully made to until, a leg of one of these companies gets kicked out from under them. And then that's how it goes. And that's like Brandy said, it's the first domino to fall. The dominoes are all lined up. It's just that first domino's fucking huge and it's really hard to push over.
Well, unless you're a hacker group, and then they can push it over twice real quick to the tune of like being rewarded $22 million in the process. Like,
I know. I went into the wrong thing.
It's the problem is that you've got a level of honesty, and none of this is based on honesty when you're on the other side of it. And then I think that's part of where, as patients, we get real frustrated because we come to our pharmacists, we come to our providers, we come to everybody else, and we go, we have this honest problem that needs to be fixed. I think y'all do the same thing, right? You're going, we have this honest problem. We're being under reimbursed. We're being pushed out. We're being bought out. We're like everything else. It's an honest problem. And you've got these shitbags on the other side going,
hey.
Well, it's kind of complicated and we should talk about it a little bit more and see who else.
It's not complicated. Yeah, anyone who goes like, well, it's more complex than that whenever they're talking about like who the actual problem is, they're like, yes, but if the drug companies didn't charge all this up front, we wouldn't need PBMs. You all really don't know what's happening here, do you? Like it's
Right.
Yeah. It's really not all that hard to figure out what's going on, but our entire system's made up in a way where it is, we have workarounds to our workarounds to our workarounds because we're all put in certain positions. It's like usual and customary. We're all stuck having to bill inflated usual and customary because we have to get a return on our actual drugs that will have a return because we're so underpaid on everything else. You can't actually have anything else. And on top of that, we don't get to see our contracts and our return rates. And so we're stuck trying to bill for whatever we can get on certain contracts. And there's going to be winners and losers in that. And we're always the losers. And in the end, we've got industries like the prescription, like discount cards, an entire industry built around sidestepping UNC laws because UNC laws are antiquated. We have an entire healthcare system built around nonsense, and we just keep propping it up, and that's just going to make things worse in the end.
Well, but we reward that, right? So part of the problem is that there are not sufficient penalties or enforcement at each stage of this activation and this mechanism and process, right? And that it doesn't matter who it is you're talking to. Little guys are going to get screwed, and the big guys are just going to say, well, we can absorb the penalty if you even come after us because we already own 3/4 of everything else, right? And so if you're going to disrupt this system, then you've got to be willing to absorb that cost. And no one's willing to. No one's willing to talk about what it takes to deal with that. And that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is going, we're not going to penalize them. We're way too scared of what they're going to go and say because ultimately they own AARP. So God bless the old people are going to get mad about it. Like it just things, right? Like I'm not trying to be an asshole about this. I'm trying to be pragmatic. And at the end of the day, if you're not going to make a rule that you're going to enforce, why make the rule in the first place? Just say that you're endorsing this smash and grab operation at the expense of patients, at the expense of providers, at the expense of pharmacists, on the backs of hospitals and on the backs of PBMs and whoever else you're going to fuck around with at that point in time. Because that's
you do it because the same reason you put up the prescription drug accountability boards to make it look like you're doing something.
I wish I could relabel those. Like, have you ever seen any of those advertisements where we're going to do the honest advertisement over the name that it's called?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do those.
I would love to call PDABs. How do we fuck over pharmacists every fucking way? Like, and screw patients in the process because you know what? In HIV, right? Like we deal with highly marginalized populations. That's where the epidemic lies, right? You're talking about super poor people. You're talking about Black folks. You're talking about queer folks. You're like everybody up and down the chain that's disadvantaged. That's where this stuff happens. And part of why I focus in this space, other than being positive myself, is because if you can solve this problem, you can solve other big problems too, right? Like if you raise the boat from the bottom, everybody benefits. That's that piece. So when I look at this and I go, okay, my patient population is never going to be able to leave the state and find a pharmacist that's being properly reimbursed. What the fuck are you doing? Right? Like, so the carriers even turn Colorado's got the leading PDAB, right? Everybody's talking about this, all of that. And the carriers came around and said, there is zero way that we can enforce any kind of savings on this. P.S. You might screw over some folks in the process.
Yeah.
And patients screaming on one side and you got independent pharmacists screaming on the other, and they're not listening. Pharmacist comes up to your legislator and says, I'm not going to be able to make sure that this life-saving medication, whether it's oncology, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, whether it's HIV, I'm not going to be able to make sure this patient can fucking live because I can't afford to do it. I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if this
It's
was
ridiculous.
if this was the train spotting theme PBM on the rocks, we'd be talking about that this whole system is designed to make the patients dependent on PBM owned pharmacies. You get all the other pharmacies out there and they have no other access to medication. So they are now dependent on that PBM. So if you can only get it by mail, you only get it by mail. You got to get it by CVS. You got to get it by CVS. You are dependent.
Did you see the suit moving forward in the Ninth Circuit? So in 2021, yes. So in 2021, CVS pulled back from a lawsuit from a bunch of patients living with HIV that said, hey, my employer says I have to use your mail order pharmacy through CVS. And CVS said, well, that's not discriminatory. We do it to everybody. That's okay. Sure. But we're also watching our medications melt in mailboxes, and you're not delivering them and all kinds of other things. Yes, it does have a disproportionate discriminatory impact on people living with HIV. And then CVS said, oh shit, the DOJ signed on to this. We got to back off. And it went back to the Ninth Circuit. So the Ninth Circuit just this last week turned around and said, yeah, this is discriminatory. So you can't force patients to go through this. And one of the arguments that I'm really hoping to see come out of this is that if CVS, Caremark specific, is under reimbursing the independent pharmacists that patients prioritize and have those relationships with, then that is also discriminatory. It is necessarily removing access to patients, especially when you're dealing with these hyper local specialized pharmacies with communities that don't trust big box brands. We have a good reason not to. They already fucking abandoned us before. Man. So Jeremy and I have gone back and forth about different drugs and different reimbursement rates, and he's like, this is this and this is this and this is how it's fucking my community over. It's a whole ass thing. Pardon my tirade.
I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. And this is what we've got to fucking deal with just to get people care. And it's because, I mean, the solution's obvious. We don't need these companies, but these companies have as much money as European countries. So they are a huge political force operating within our country. They're a giant terrorist organization. That's how I see it. They're pretty much organized crime at this point that we just kind of put up with because they have everyone by the balls. What are we supposed to do?
They planned it decades ago. And when the opportunity came, I loved President Obama and I love the idea behind the Affordable Care Act. But the moment the opportunity came up and all those insurance companies were like, ooh, we don't know. It's such a big task. I mean, it would be so hard. But behind the scenes, they were like, and they wrote this thing out. They were able to make it.
I'll never forget when they were talking about the ACA whenever it was being passed. I mean, I wasn't even in pharmacy school then. I just grew up in healthcare. I was like, you all fucking wait. Just wait. Watch this shit. Whenever they were talking, I will never forget the moment that one of the lawmakers was talking about what was in it or whatever, and the AHIP lobbyist behind her passed her notes on what was in the fucking bill.
Because it was so insane. Oh my God, so complicated.
But it's not so industry always adjusts. And that's part of the problem with how we structure these things. Is we don't look at them and go, okay, what are they going to do differently? So they instituted the medical loss ratio rule. And for folks who aren't familiar with that, that's your 80-20 rule, that it's basically a profit cap for the carrier itself. But they didn't institute it for the PBMs. So when these carriers, giant carriers, start buying the PBM and the PBM says, whoops, more because we have a profit on this side. Technically, it's a separate company. It's self-dealing. It's fucking fraud. And it's the entire reason that there were rules and the FTC came in and told Merck, the big manufacturer, you can't own a PBM. Why the fuck didn't we do that when it came to carriers? Why isn't there a pharmacy loss ratio or an equivalent benefit that protects patients in this process? Make sure your dollar
synergy.
Right?
Synergy. Name me another corporate term. Synergy. Values, economies of scale.
Vertical integration.
Vertical integration.
So the first time I heard vertical integration was on 30 Rock. Did y'all watch that show at all?
Oh my gosh, I hadn't seen that in years.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking Jack.
I was about to say that's an Alec Baldwin joke, and that might be iffy right now. So when 10 years, 15 years pass, and I see this as a thing, and I'm reading it, and I understand what the problem is, and I'm like, this is a fucking joke that was written 15 years ago, and they just did it.
Yeah.
So if you do something fun, like go back and look at the news releases that those guys put out at the time they were making the acquisitions on these PBMs, they are full of corporate jargon like synergy, but they're also full of promises that and this is, just go back. Like, I challenge anyone listening, go back, read these news releases. Not a single promise was kept, not one.
Firewalls. We'll have firewalls. We're not even communicating between each other. It's ridiculous. Like, it was all just ridiculous. And it took like us getting like Lena Khan into the FTC to try to get some of this shit done, because she actually went back because the FTC was gutted for like 4 fucking decades and they couldn't do anything, and they stacked it with a bunch of people who didn't want to do anything. You think state Medicaids are fucking lazy? The old people at the FTC are some of the laziest fucking people who ever met, because all they had to do was rubber stamp fucking mergers. They didn't care. They make the fucking people at state Medicaid office look like the hardest workers on this planet.
Every time Jeremy goes on a truth tirade, I'm just going to start taking long sips of my drink.
Yeah.
Oh, you do it.
I'm just so grateful.
I'm usually blacked out by the end of this.
Alcohol. Every single episode, it's a different Jameson on a single ice cube drink.
Yeah.
I knew
yeah.
about that. But part of the reason that I think I hooked it up, I had been watching what y'all were doing with Putt for a while, right? I've got a great deal of admiration. I've always recognized where our partners are in this space, whether it's nurses or pharmacists. But hey, dude, this other thing going on in Virginia might fuck you over. Like,
yeah,
they're trying to fuck people over in Colorado, and Washington and Oregon and Maryland. And they try to do it in Vermont. They try to introduce it in Illinois. They try to introduce it in Michigan. And I got to tell y'all, y'all's partners in Illinois helped have those conversations that were necessary, because there's a pragmatic piece here that says if my pharmacy where my family's gone for the last 2-3 generations, where even that's the only pharmacy I know, or even the second or third pharmacy I know, that's who I trust, isn't getting paid well enough for this drug to be able to actually supply it, my life-saving drug, the thing that keeps me alive, the thing that stops me from developing AIDS, can't afford to supply my medication. That's a thing. And I've watched guys like Jeremy take that. They take it in the chin every single fucking time. And that's the thing that I don't think is really well appreciated when we talk about the policy issues and why that last paragraph is so important, that personal piece, that wholesomeness that we all have a good laugh on, is that there is an honest investment. I have watched independent pharmacists deliver medications in the middle of the night because somebody's scared. I have watched independent pharmacists in the middle of a hurricane going, you know what, my meds are going to go bad. Who needs them? How do I fill them? How do I get them fast? I'll deal with the reimbursement on the back end. That's a cost that can put a business under. That's a cost that can destroy a family that owns that pharmacy.
Yeah.
But y'all do it every day.
Yeah, it's really
tough.
hard to make the decision whenever you're looking at someone who's been, who's a generational patient who, like my pharmacy, I grew up in my pharmacy. These people knew me when I was they've known me since the day I was born and know my entire family. And now I own the pharmacy, and they walk in and I have to have these conversations like, okay, we can't fill it.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, we can't do it. Like, we're losing $100 or $200. And they look at me and, they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I've literally known them my entire life. And it guts you. And then there are other times where you have a patient who, it's a homebound patient, you deliver to them, like you are literally like their lifeline to their medication. And they see our delivery driver every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And I can't just tell them like, I'm sorry, we can't fill this medication. And so it
Yeah.
becomes this, balancing act of, okay, can we afford to lose this much here? Maybe they have one over here that'll at least just get us back to, the baseline of the cost. Like there's no
And
profit
even then, you don't
involved.
know because we got
Yeah.
effective rates and everything else to where, we're not able to calculate it up front. We don't know what we're fucking making. We don't
Right.
know what's going on. We just know that most of it's at a loss at this point. And it's like, we got to stop the bleeding. And that's one problem with the DIR fees being moved up front is we don't even know what our money makers are. Everything's
Right.
being taken out up front. So we're getting tricked into like backing out these claims that they're going to owe us significant money from. I mean, they're fucking us every single way. And it's just like, and you have to tell these people this sometimes, like, I can't continue filling the script. I'd love to take care of you. And it kills you because you've known them for a decade.
Well, or you
Right.
grew up next to them when you're dealing with intergenerational families. And this, I don't want people to think that this is some hokey backwoods bullshit, right? This happens.
I'm a hokey.
I'm hoping myself. Hey, I saw that handle, but this is in inner cities. One of the pharmacies that we're real close with is Car Pharmacies here out in New Orleans. And when they were first doing the COVID vaccines and everything, one of the things that we did as a service project for my stepdaughters was to bring them lunch. We put on the mask, we did all the things and everything else, and they sat down and they said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because you're one of the only pharmacies that has maintained stock of every single product and reached out, not just had it, but you reached out to every single one of your communities. You set up teams, you did everything else. How do we communicate and support and love that, right?" I can talk policy all day long. Part of why y'all are in this and why you matter to these communities is because you've got that trust. They had folks that grew up literally like in that family growing up next to patients with their babies growing up too. I don't give a shit what CVS has to say. I don't care. I don't care what Express Scripts have to say. I don't care. You can't build that relationship out of nowhere. You can't build that piece that says I can move through a catastrophe with my community and trusting my healthcare on this front line in any other way.
Are you sure? Because they have incredibly polite people overseas that answer the phone.
Right. Yeah, Jeremy was talking about all these corporate terms that they use, synergies and firewalls and things, but the other one is commoditization. I mean, they want it to be like a robot is in the back dispensing pills, and there's no need to have a human face or a human relationship.
I don't want my pills treated like McDonald's.
That relationship is key. That and these independent pharmacies, they're part of the community. That no one knows their community better than a community pharmacist. I mean, that word community pharmacist is key. And then that's what makes it different. That's why the patients want to keep coming back and will fight to keep coming back.
Yeah,
that's the thing about pharmacy is there's so many intangibles into what we do. And they're always just like, well, do you want to be able to bill for this or that? Not really. It was actually better when we just like got paid decently and we just threw a ton of services at everybody to like try to get more business in because we knew we'd make money. That was when we were at our tip top. We would supply things for free. We would do a ton of things for the community to get people in because we were paid well. And that's long gone. Now they want to monetize everything because if you monetize every little thing and every single little claim, or you monetize this paper, the more work you create, the more that they can extract from the system. And all it is value extraction. And it's like Matt Stoller calls it, everyone's got banker brain. Like they're thinking about this as the financial instruments are healthcare, when really it is not the financial instruments. It's what's actually happening. And we're not paying for the actual value of healthcare. We are paying these companies to extract value from the people providing actual care. And until we figure out how to separate that, well, I can tell you how to separate it. You just gut a few Fortune 15 companies. But until we get to the point to where there's actual value in care again, it's not going to go back. And these middlemen, these PBMs, these insurance companies, these conglomerates, they're going to continue to game the system that they created. They're going to continue to extract more and more out of the economy to the point that they sit around and just like now, they just collect a ton of premiums and they don't pay for anything.
And they're going to continue to lie about the omni-channel. That somehow makes it more efficient, somehow brings costs down. I remember Larry Merlo introduced that idea back when he was the head of CVS, the idea that they were going to move healthcare into all these omni-channels, which isn't a very comforting word if you think about it. Like if you're sick, I don't know anybody who's like, oh, I don't feel well, I really feel sick, please move me into the omni-channel. Like there's nothing comforting about that. But then when you think about what they are doing, they're merging tech terms, and underneath it all, as you said, extracting value, right? We'll be more efficient. Costs will go down. It's a big lie.
They're vampires. They're just finding more ways to feed. That's it.
Right.
They just need more.
This idea of efficiency, at the end of the day, efficiency, it shouldn't be necessarily from the payer's perspective.
No.
I don't want efficiency that makes them feel good. I want efficiency that says I'm getting the care that I need when I need it. And that's going to come at a cost. There's a triangle of service delivery, and it's what you want, the way you want it, at the price you want it. So the way is speed, right? So quality, speed, and price. And you only ever get to have two of those things. And one of the things that I try real hard to communicate to folks is that if you want it good and fast, then it's going to cost you a lot of money. That's just how it works. If you want it fast and cheap, then you're going to lose quality. There's a piece in this balancing that I don't think is actually like, it's all being discussed by people outside of us, right? Like it's being discussed.
You know what's fucked up though? In independent pharmacy, your cheapest option is your fastest option because we are not terrible like the chains are.
Right.
That's the fucked up thing is we are the absolute best option in all of healthcare, and we're still getting shit on.
Right.
Well, Jeremy,
we adapt.
In healthcare, quality is the key because we're not dealing with a pair of shoes here. This is people's health and
their lives.
So skipping on quality is not really somewhere you can say, well, let's buy another pair of shoes. You might be needing another kidney if you don't get the right quality care. I mean, the ramifications are way more serious.
I can literally think of just in the past 2 years, at least 8, maybe 10 patients who have walked into my pharmacy. And because we see them regularly, we could just look at them and know that something was off, like something's not right, like, is this person okay? And every single one of those patients, like, whether it was like pneumonia or, we could just tell like, their blood sugar's off, something's going on. Because we see these people all the time. We know their stories, we know their families, we know their histories. We're able to stop at that very moment and go, hey, John, why don't you sit down, let's talk for a second. Like, let's talk to me about what's going on. And that is something that you cannot put dollar value on it. But that is truly like the services and the healthcare that we provide that you're never going to get in a chain pharmacy. And obviously, you're never going to get that in a mail order pharmacy because nobody's ever going to put eyeballs on these people.
Yeah.
So that, that's the value that you just can't measure.
And that's exactly why they can't afford to put us on a level playing field with them. We kick the shit out of them every single solitary time because our service would be there. They can't afford. They got to tip the scale to keep us down.
Well, and
because if we're on a level playing field, it's done. Like they're done.
Yeah, we win. Like give us site neutral payments, pay us well. We're gonna win every single fucking time because we're going to put more of ourselves into it than like these corpos ever will. They're not. They're trying to extract as much value, and we're trying to put things in for the benefit of our patients in our communities. And make a decent living. I didn't go to fucking pharmacy school and put so much of my shit on the line to not at least have a decent, like, middle fucking class life. And at this point is being threatened just because I take care of people. I do fucking millions in goddamn fucking sales every single fucking year. And I got to worry about my goddamn payments. It's ridiculous.
There's an honest part to that, Jeremy. And I really, at the end of the day, when we're looking at highly politicized issues, people that have our first line of defense going, I know where you can get what you need to make sure that you don't fucking split your wrist today, is going to be your pharmacist that you have an honest relationship with. And I guarantee you, because they fucking turned around and did it, is Walgreens and CVS turned around and said, we won't do these things. We're afraid of getting sued. And I guarantee you that your community pharmacist said, I don't want you wanting to fucking slit your wrists.
Yep.
Right.
We have stories of pharmacists that as soon as it started to go that direction, before, there were laws and determinations, they started making plans for how they were going to take care of their patients. And it was heroic. And it was the same way during COVID. We had pharmacies that were working overtime while, Walgreens and CVS had bungled the rollout of the vaccine.
Oh my God, they bungled the rollout. Then they came to us. And of course, because we're us, we can pivot real quick because we're small businesses and we're smart. When you talk about small businesses, small businesses in the U.S. are great. There's a lot of smart people behind them. You look at independent pharmacies and you got some of the smartest fucking business owners there are, which makes it so fucking personal whenever you've got these fucking articles coming out saying that, well, they're not adapting to the time. They're not doing this. Fuck you.
Oh my God.
We were able to pivot.
that article
We
was
helped
awful.
save this fucking country from that goddamn pandemic. And what they do, they turned around and they let us all get fucked. And so what are we supposed to do? We're just fighting for fucking payments right now. We put our shit on the line. We went through hell during that goddamn pandemic. And then they turn around and they let us fucking die.
Well, and quite honestly, dying is not an extraction here. For anybody who ends up hearing this, it's really kind of very important that I think it was the third or fourth person employment rate behind line item cooks and farm workers were pharmacists who died at the acute phase of the pandemic because they were the ones putting their lives on line. And we think about our healthcare providers on all that, but your pharmacists were the ones meeting you. I don't know how to fix this, but you need to go to the doctor right now. They were the ones driving people to that process, closing down stores, risking their families, everything else. When I say that your pharmacist turns around, you're independent, no fuck CVS, you're independent pharmacist that stops and says, this is my family, this is my community, I will take that risk. They do that. And when we talk about intangibles, there is no level of compensation that says, I love you today.
What about the hand sanitizer story from the pandemic? I mean, talk about pivoting when people were buying Everclear to turn that into hand sanitizer, the pharmacists were, or I have so many stories of pharmacy owners making hand sanitizer for their communities.
We had police officers, so we would make it in these massive 10-gallon jugs. We're pouring it in, mixing it up. We had the liquor stores that every time they would get a shipment, they would not sell it to anyone. They would call us so we could come pick it up by the cases. We had the police department, we had fire, we had EMS. Hell, even our county emergency management came and they would literally bring 5-gallon jugs, those water jugs. They would bring them in, we would fill up those water jugs, and then they had reusable bottles where they could hit the spout and whoever needed it could fill up their hand sanitizer bottle.
But CVS gave you a $5 gas credit.
Right? Yeah. Nobody got paid for this. And that's the thing I really want to point out is nobody got paid for this. Nobody got paid for being up in the middle of the night to make this shit happen. Nobody still gets paid to make sure that people show up. When we talk, that we hear from, God bless that 3-letter pharmacy about their plus up and their values and everything else in terms of what they add into something. And it's very masked, right? It's very, how do we make it sound intangible? But the intangibles is making Everclear hand sanitizer in the middle of the fucking
Well, and it's happening with this whole Change Healthcare thing. I mean, people aren't even sure they're getting paid, but they have patients coming in that need their medicine. I mean, there's a lot of pharmacies that were just saying, okay, well, I'll give you the medicine. I'll just hope I'm going to get paid for it later. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah,
like when shit hits the fan, we do it. And that's the thing. It's like, we're out there and we're doing it. And like, I tell people all the time, it's not the pandemic that like broke something in me to where I had to be extra out there and like really in your face about everything. It's the way we were treated afterwards, because we've done this and we really, really put ourselves out there, because my entire motto has always been take care of your community and your community is going to take care of you. Yeah, it's a gangster motto, but I believe in it. But we would do this. And now like we're at the point where squeeze so bad. I get messages every day from people who like find this podcast and like find inspiration from it. And I've had pharmacists messaging me about like how they were considered like suicide and stuff, and how like we've given them some kind of hope. And it's like that's like a huge weight in some ways, but it's also a huge drive because they deserve better than that. We all deserve better than that. And we've always been kind of, nice about everything. And it's time for us to not be nice.
Yeah.
Like we have to get paid or we can't take care of people anymore. And they always like try to counter with like, oh, these independent, they're just greedy. Oh, so have you seen some of these things that came out about, oh, this one pharmacy getting in trouble for like $1 million in fraud or something, like some of the compounding pharmacies, when that scam was going on. And it's just like, you have no fucking clue what we do every single day about all the losses we take every single fucking day to take care of people. And you're picking a few bad actors out to make us look bad. It's fucking insane. They don't care. It's like the government doesn't care. The regulators don't care. Well, except Lena Khan, because she's a princess and a queen. But it's like people don't care. And then you got all these people coming at you like online, these like traders that are just like, yeah, but look at this value. Shut the fuck up, rando on Twitter. These fucking people that trade crypto, I don't want to hear any fucking shit from you about fucking value. Come on.
Jeremy, my wife is dying right now. She's in the room cracking up because she's like, first of all, he just called Lena Khan fucking General Leia, right? Like that was a whole other thing. But it's you're not wrong, and that's this piece.
Lena,
here.
if you're listening, my wife said you're my hall pass. Just saying. Just saying.
Hey, me and Carrie Fisher, right? I've got my own problems. The point is, like there's these risks that we're taking and all that, and they try to muddle it up, and I think that there's this piece that gets missed, right? And it's this piece that y'all get fucked every single time. When you say, I've got to meet a patient need at this dollar amount, but that's not the actual dollar amount, you go searching and do this thing, and that creates security risk for patients because what you're trying to do is your best. And you keep your eyes on, is that bottle the right bottle? Is that pill the right pill? You're doing all these things, right? You still got to get the fucking medication to a patient. And so when you're dealing with under reimbursement, you're dealing with the risk that we saw very highly in oncology and HIV in the 90s. We're seeing it come back. And that's counterfeit medication.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
Y'all aren't trying to fuck anybody over. You're trying to actually meet the need. And how do you get between this rock and this hard place trying to do the goddamn thing?
Here's what's fucked. Counterfeiters are actually getting licensed as wholesalers.
Yeah.
Full on license.
Yeah, there was just a case I read about, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, of a wholesaler.
So people are like, oh, why don't you use the secondary wholesaler to get this awesome deal on this? Because I don't know if it's fucking real. That's why.
It's aspirin.
It's like some of these fucking people that like when I post something, they're just like, you got a loss there. But what if you ordered through this? Like, why are you all not checking this? I've never heard of this rando company out of fucking random ass Idaho. I don't know. What? I don't know who these wholesalers are.
Well, there's between 4 and 6 wholesalers that are legitimate and thoroughly vetted and everything else, but they have their own costs and everything else. And so you end up with these folks going, I don't know where I got this shit. And the ultimate answer is, while you've got a desperate pharmacist on the other end going, I need to, this is my family. This is my patient. This is somebody I need to make sure they get this medication, because whether it's their insulin, whether it's their anticoagulant, whether it's their antiretroviral, it doesn't matter. You are trying to make sure that your family is taken care of. And what do you do when your family needs to be taken care of? You take
whatever it takes.
That's necessary.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure some of these wholesalers exist just to fuck up MAC pricing. I'm pretty fucking sure they exist just to fuck MAC pricing, because they'll take a high cost item and be like, oh man, you know what? We'll offer it to you cheap. You're not doing me a favor. You're not doing me a favor by doing that. I'm still going to get paid shit. Even if I get it cheap, I'm still paid under.
Since independent pharmacy is obviously the Rebel Alliance, would you consider what we're in right now either the battle of Geonosis, where the Clone Wars started, or
No.
would we be mid Battle of Scarif, where the guerrilla tactics are getting the plans for the Death Star?
A better way to
Geonosis was more fucking mid D. We lost.
I would actually say it's a timeline.
I'm hoping
Star
we're
Wars
seeing
universe. It's
Endor.
the time before the Death Star blew up, and the time after the Death Star blew up. And I think we are in the
Which Death Star?
The first one.
The first
We're-
one. I think
yeah.
we're after the first Death Star blew up. We've not blown up the second one yet because people are actually aware. There's lawmakers actually talking and know what PBMs are. I think we blew up the first Death Star, which was actual lawmaker awareness. Now we're on to the second Death Star, fucking action. That's what we're on to. Which leads me next. Miguel, tell me what you've been up to lately.
Man, what a crazy since January 1, what insanity has happened since then? I mean,
It's
just
bad.
Yeah, like I think the problem is I think the Empire is going to strike back in the middle of there's going to be some ups and downs in this story. So it's not going to be a straight line to victory, but
the problem is like there's not that much time left for most of them. Some of us can float all right. Like we've got multiple pharmacies, like we've got, buying power to where we're at least eking something out, but most do not have that. So if it grinds on for another year, they're going to be gone.
Well, and so you're dealing with a timeline. For folks that are listening for the first time, you're dealing with a timeline that says most independent pharmacies are going to be independent, non-chain pharmacies are going to be gone between the next 3 and 5 years. So you're talking about
it'll be faster than that.
30% gone. So
Deb, you've been preaching this to Minnesota legislature.
I have.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of it?
Minnesota legislature has been very disappointing for the last several years, and there's a lot of reasons probably behind it. This year, we really felt like we got somewhere because when you start talking to legislators about PBMs and their antics and everything, they get it. They understand it. They know what you're doing. Yet they didn't feel the tug at their heart, and I'm just going to say it that way, hard enough to do something to help us. And we've been screaming to the hills that we're almost dead, we're almost dead, we're almost dead. Yet we've turned around and reinvented ourselves, found other ways to find some revenue, but that's drying up. There's not much else we can do.
No,
and
you can't sell that many knickknacks to make up for, $100 losses on high fucking cost medications. That's what people don't get. Like, you don't sell them as fucking toothpaste.
Yeah, well, that, and when DIRP's got moved to the front of the process, go us. That's awesome. It's not transparent.
No.
And if you look at what you got paid prior to the DIR fees going to the front of the transaction, so it's going to be transparent, it's worse than it was. And they're not supposed to be
worse.
DIR fees.
Yeah, give me the DIR fees instead. At least it was like a fucking no interest loan. Shit. Cash flow's king, and they fucked our cash flow.
So I don't know. I think we've made a lot of endways into getting people to understand the problem. But the problem is we can't get them to act. So they nod their head. Yep, that's a problem. Yep, we got it, Deb. Yep.
You have to have a fucking stranglehold on them to try to make them get it through. You got to have promises. You've got to make it to where these lawmakers, if they go back on their promises, they will feel terrible personally, and they will professionally be afraid of what happens to them.
So the piece on that is making sure that you've got, and this is really hard on your patient side, right? But those are their constituents that are telling a story every single time that says, this is how this affects me. And how does that make media? How does that make a story? How does that mean a goddamn thing? We saw it, I forget what state it was in. There was a patient who turned around and he died.
Yeah.
And it was his parents talking about how his pharmacy benefit manager had denied what his provider had decided was important at that point in time and refused the proper reimbursement through his independent pharmacy on his insulin.
Was it the inhaler?
It's the inhaler. You're right.
Yeah.
That's y'all's story as much as it is ours, right? And I don't know the right way. So I know how to talk to my patients, but I don't know how to talk to asthmatic patients, right? That's the piece. These are real people. This isn't a story. It's not a profile line. It's not something else. These are real people. These are real constituents that these legislators need to be held responsible for not enforcing their rules, not making the right rules. Like, what are you doing to protect patients in this process? And at the end of the day, what I know is independent pharmacists show up every single time to say this is how people are getting fucked.
Deb did a great job. She testified. I saw the hearing where you testified, and it was a great testimony. And the committee loved you. I mean, they love this. They've been educated. I think all the work you've done to educate them on what a PBM is and the problems that they're throwing on independent pharmacy, that work paid off because they, bipartisan way, they got it. And I think that some of what happens is they get some words talked to them from the other side that there's a fear it's going to raise costs. I mean, that's usually the big thing. They kind of have this boogeyman. It's going to raise costs. It's going to raise costs. And they never substantiate it. They don't have any real figures that you could tear apart, but they throw this specter out there. And that's what that's one of the things that you have to be watchful for and find out who on this, this legislation, it's not easy. It goes through various committees. It's got all sorts of ways you can throw a monkey wrench into this thing. And, you got to kind of shepherd that thing all the way through. And so there's a lot of ways to kill legislation, and it's really hard to pass it when you're on the other side. So, but
Well,
you can get a committee member, you can get anything, and you could just sideline it, or you could just make it to where it's just not brought up. That's one issue they're getting into with Alaska right now. I was talking to somebody from up that way. They've got some good stuff. They can't get it through because there was a huge campaign, which it reeks of Chamber of Commerce, straight up reeks of Chamber of Commerce, because all the business owners in Alaska got scared by the boogeyman of it raising costs for employers. And so it's getting sidelined, and trying to get it across the finish line and just even getting it brought up for a vote that it's going to pass. That's the thing that people don't realize, is just because something like passes with flying colors through their fucking state Congress doesn't mean it had a ton of goddamn support.
Well, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be enforced. Representative Manley did a great job at actually pinning this down. What do you mean that it's going to raise costs? What do you mean these things? Because you're being really vague.
Illinois, you mean?
Vague.
Yeah, yep. Illinois.
Yeah.
Because she turned around and she said, what do you mean by this? And they didn't want to answer that it meant their profit line, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's
proprietary.
She called it out, though, right? Like, that's a beautiful process. But where does it move everything else is a really good question, because I don't have a good answer for that. That's umpteen hundreds of other people in the process.
It's great sound bites.
It's fabulous sound bites. He did a great job at saying, but what do you mean by that? And I think that we need more legislators that ask that question. What do you mean by that? You're going to use all this jargon. You're going to say this means something terrible. But what do you fucking mean by that in a pragmatic process? What portion of that is your profit versus your benefit to patient? What portion of that sustains the actual supply chain versus keeping my shareholders happy?
Yep. And that's why we got the Debs of the world who go up and they're just like, Deb is one of the few people in the world that I just know is smarter than me. And like, it's one of those things where I like fully respect her. And like, that's rare for me, because most people I'm like, I'm buddies with. And Deb, like, I put her on this like fucking pedestal of like respect, and it's weird. I don't encounter that much in my life, but we need the Debs of the world to go up and like educate the living shit out of everybody. What we also need to realize is, after the Debs of the world do that, we need to put pressure on them, because they might understand logically what is happening. That doesn't mean they're going to act on it. They have self-interest. They have to think about what is going on. Like, could this potentially raise this? I got these other lobbyists telling me this. They're also offering money for my campaign. We have to be so annoying and so persistent that those little campaign contributions are not worth the trouble. And that's one thing that I think that we're missing right now. And one thing that I've been pushing for is we actually have to organize at a level to where if you cross us, they know that they're in for a load of annoyance. And if we don't do that, then I'm afraid they're going to be one of those like We tried to save them, which I guess everyone has mail order now. It's so terrible. Like, that's what politicians will do. They will lament and beat their chest and just tear and scream to the heavens that they are so sad that their community pharmacies died while they did nothing about it.
There is nothing that stops you from talking to your patients, people in front of you, your community, about what's affecting you.
Now, in undergrad, I studied political science. I studied sociology. That's what I did because I planned on eventually going into like policy or this or that. And I didn't, because guess what? This was a way better career path. And this is what my family did. And I was going to contribute to my family. And then, of course, it all fell apart.
You make me want to get paid?
Yeah. Old Jeremy wanted to get paid. And then that's one thing that's missing. Like, when I talk to a lot of the organizations in this, they have no fucking clue how to protest. They have no fucking clue how to organize anyone. They just think that if we go out and we give a good argument, everyone's going to be like, oh man, they're right. This was like Al Pacino and Sin of a Woman at the end. They really convinced me. Oh man, that's not how it works. Like, we've got to get it out there, and we've got to educate our lawmakers. We got to make stances. We got to make our sound bites. That's why the ESI protest is so fucking important. Everyone that can make it has to go to Express Scripts. I am leaving my child and my wife for one evening. That is a lot for me because I happen to be very fond of them. And I'm traveling over to Missouri to go to the Express Scripts protest.
At the end of the day, no matter who's paying what, they don't want these lawmakers don't want a story that says I abandoned my constituents versus I abandoned a business. Those things are a story that they don't want crafted around them. That is career ending. So what does that look like, and how do we support that?
Deb, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think the taxes that we've used in the past has gotten us a lot of ground, in the sense that legislatures understand what the problem is. Legislatures understand that we need help. Now we have to maybe change our tact a little bit to push legislatures to do the right thing and to actually do something to help us, rather than nod and agree that there's a problem. They have to help us fix the problem. And that's going to be the next year, is pushing them that hard.
So one thing that pharmacists have that the other side doesn't is you have voters, employers in the district of these politicians. I mean, you guys go to the polls, you employ your community, you serve your community. The other guys are in some other state, they're far away, they're remote, as big as they are. You still have that advantage.
We can get some of them. Like, we got people like Jen who like does this stuff. And if we got enough of a base, we can do that.
So what Deb was talking about was activating patients and giving that space that says, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And how do we define these things and make it tangible, right? Like, how do we activate on that process? Because those stories matter. Those stories are scary to legislators, not because they don't have an interest, but because they're not doing the thing, right? You're pointing it out. We need that microscope. On a patient level, we don't have it, but you do. That's part of our investment. That's part of what we do.
So now that we're coming to the end of our drinks, we need something Star Wars themed within the whole independent pharmacy PBM fight to toast to. And Miguel, Star Wars was your thing growing up. What you got?
Let's toast to the destruction of the second Death Star.
Amen.
Do it.
Cheers.
And may the fourth be with you.
Cheers.
To learn more about Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency and how you can help fight PBM abuse of our healthcare system, visit our website at truthrx.org.